And welcome to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast. My name is Jesse, and I'll be your host. So on today's episode, we are going to head over to Camp Chippewa, where we are going to meet all of our other white privileged young people who go to this camp, I guess. We are also going to head over to the hospital and meet our new baby that is now a part of our family, I guess. That's right. Y'all are family here to me. Okay. But we're also going to call the agency to talk about a little lady named Debbie Jelinski, because what the fuck is wrong with her? But anyway, besides all that, though, today we're going to be covering a little movie from 1993 called Addams Family Values. That's right. It's around the Thanksgiving time, is when you're hearing this. So, happy Turkey Day, I guess. I think of it as ham and mac and cheese day, because that's what I like on this holiday, because fuck Thanksgiving as a holiday, the history of that, but whatever. But, I couldn't do this alone by myself. All right. So I decided to bring on a guest to this episode of the show. So this guest of mine is actually, don't even know if they've ever been on a podcast before, but first time for everything, right? So they are a public speaker and an advocate for diversity and inclusion in different organizations and things like that. So they've done public speaking appearances. Apparently they're also in a band. That's kind of cool. And also they're like a super cool new friend that I've met. But please welcome Travis McMaster. Hi, Travis. How are you doing today?
Hey, how's it going? Excited to be here.
Good.
To be talking about Addams Family Values. Absolutely love this film forever. Also, I'm caught up on the mac and cheese. I could go for some mac and cheese, and I love it whenever a family member brings mac and cheese to any holiday event. So
amazing. I mean, it's just so good. Not for the lactose intolerant, perhaps. I understand, but it's still worth it, though. But yeah. But Travis, so the way I kind of met you, I guess, was you actually, I didn't know who you were at all. And then and I think you heard me on the Horror Queers podcast covering All About Evil. And we just kind of started messaging really from there. And I was just like, you're also like a East Coaster, myself being from Baltimore. You are, I believe, in PA, yep. Which certain parts are really beautiful and I really like it. But, I thought that all right, cool. We should, just talk. And I was like, well, if you ever want to be on the show, I don't have a process. I literally am just like, hey, you want to be on my show? Great. Oh, you have Zoom? All right, awesome. So, but I said, I was like, if you'd want to be on the show or anything, what would you cover? And you actually gave me some things of would you cover this or would you cover that or whatever? And I'm just like, yeah, probably actually.
I had a lot of questions. There's a lot of movies that I want to talk about.
Exactly. And you definitely will not be the only time on this show. You'll be on another time, of course. Be on the lookout for that, y'all. But anyway, so but I will say that, I just liked your vibe, dude. I really this is great. I always want to make sure that I'm being respectful of your pronouns and things like that as well. I know you go by they, them, I believe. Yes. So I always think it's important to do that. I think of dude as not even a masculine. I'm just I would call anybody a dude. I'm very much Ed from Good Burger in that way. Truly.
Or for myself, a Ninja Turtle. I mean,
exactly.
Dude, or all those movies from the early 90s, right? It's surprising they don't say dude in the Addams Family, but I guess that would
I know. Isn't that crazy though? But anyway, we're just chit-chatting at this point. But I guess to bring it back to Addams Family Values. So I normally also like to talk about hey, what is your history with this movie? So also, I guess, Travis, what is your history with this movie? When did you become aware of it? What is it about it that makes you like it? It would make you want to come on and talk to this homosexual about it, I guess.
Yeah, so I guess I have a long history with this movie, but I was trying to remember. I'm pretty sure I saw this first before the original film. I don't believe I saw it in theaters. I probably saw it at Blockbuster, or rented it or whatever. Ironically, as a kid that wasn't really into spooky things, there was just something about this family and this family dynamic that I just absolutely fell in love with. And then, of course, Christina Ricci being in it and just being in so many movies throughout my childhood. And it's always been there. I guess as I've gotten older, I've come to realize how much it's shaped my personal aesthetic, the things that I enjoy, my sense of humor, just so many things. especially when this rewatch, trying to like take notes and then actually think about it, I'm like, oh my goodness, like this movie is like everything to me. So much so. And I'll just say this like kind of right off the top that, I mean, those listening, you can't see, obviously this is an audio thing, but I have a bunch of tattoos, and on my right leg, it's a bunch of portraits, and I have Morticia, Gomez, and Wednesday with a bunch of other characters and whatnot from different pop culture things like the Munsters and Alf on my leg. So I just absolutely love this movie. Always down for watching it and always down for talking about it.
I love that. That's awesome. If anything, when this episode comes out, when you're hearing this, listeners, I think we'll just make it a point that with Travis's social media, I'm sure they will also post like a picture of like their leg or something to just kind of show like, hey, I love this fucking movie, y'all. I'm sure of that. But so I'm giving you something to do, Travis. There you go. But that's
taking
totally
notes
fair.
as we speak.
I know. Go put up this tattoo leg picture. Okay, got it. No feet pics though. That's an extra fee, but that's a whole other story. Anyway, but that's totally fair. I mean, because I was born in 1992. I think you're a little older than I am. Is that correct? I would assume so.
I was established in 1985, according to the tattoo on my wrist. So yeah, I'm a little older than you.
At least from what that says. I mean, you could have gotten that from aliens for all I know. Who knows? But anyway, so I'm a little younger, but like, I definitely was in the demographic of who could watch this movie, I guess. However, I did not grow up watching this movie like at all. I think my sister might have. She is born in 1989, so like I think maybe she did at one point. Like I'm kind of tangentially aware of it, but also I was like, I didn't grow up watching it. So I was just like, okay, like to be honest, I don't even know if I knew who Christina Ricci was for like the longest time. Like I can't remember specifically like what her first role I remember was, right? It's like, but she said so many iconic ones, but like, it's one of these things where it's like, I didn't really know. But obviously looking back, it's like, oh, this was such a great one for her. And, someone like Anjelica Huston and like Joan Cusack and all this, but yeah, I think I saw this more so just in my later years as I've been picking up. Not that I grew up any sort of like weird religious where I wasn't able to watch movies of certain types or like whatever, that might also just, restrict you to be able to watch stuff. But like, really, I'm so glad that I found this movie though, because I also have not I have not seen the first movie from 1991, which we'll talk a little bit about because we kind of have to talk about it a little bit. But I just like this movie a little bit more for its camp value. Because off the top, it is the campiest one. It has to be, but
wait.
yeah.
So wait, you've never seen the first one? Did I hear that correctly?
That's correct. I have not seen it. I know it has, besides the grandmother, everybody else is like the same, but like, and I think it has to do, we'll get into the what the movie is kind of about, but like, but yeah, I'd never really seen it. It just never really interested me, I guess. And not that I was like that or like the Munsters. Like I wasn't like that person who watched like the old television show or even like watched the Munsters a ton. I think I was tangentially aware of them. Maybe I'd catch it every so often, but it wasn't like, I think more so weirdly enough, and this makes no sense, but also the most sense, where really honestly, I think I probably watched more Brady Bunch than I did something like the Addams Family or the Munsters. Because why not? Which is probably why I love those Brady Bunch movies like a lot. Which is very interesting because I have that, but then also I'm such a horror head too. It's like, well, why wouldn't I have watched these back then? But I don't know, man. It's so weird. But yeah, that's like kind of my history. But like, again, I'm so glad I have this movie and I'm so glad I'm like able to talk about it and all this stuff because it really is just like the art of doing a sequel so well. Do you know what I mean? And where it can stand on its own, and I think that, yeah, I that's just what I think about it, really. Do you have anything else to add about that or anything like that before we start to move into anything about like what happened with the Addams and how did they come to be?
I guess nothing really to add right now. There's, of course, excited to talk about some of the iconic scenes from it. I was also trying to think when it comes to the cast, cast, like maybe I didn't see this when it first came out, and because Raul Julia was in Street Fighter, you know, and I was one of those kids that grew up on all those like martial art movies and like Surf Ninja, Three Ninjas, Street Fighter, the Mortal Kombats, and I was like, oh, like, there's that guy, and he's in this movie, and like I like this movie, so I like that movie. So no, but let's get into chatting about this wonderful, fantastic movie.
Yes, of course. Also, I will say that I guess I will have to go back at some point and actually watch the first one, because I know it is on Paramount, so I probably can watch it pretty easily, but I will make it a point to do that, and then we will talk on Instagram about it. I'll be like, hey, this movie sucked, or oh, this movie was actually really good, like, or whatever.
It's really good. And I definitely think there's like two camps of people, like those who like saw the second one first, love it, and then, you know, enjoy the first one. And I enjoy the first one for sure. But then I know there are people who saw the first one first and they love it, and you know, the sequel is the sequel. But
I think it's like similar, weirdly enough, and we'll talk a little bit about it, just like how it kind of shaped other movies that came after it. But like, the same kind of argument I think can also be said for literally the Brady Bunch movies, where like we all pretend the third one doesn't exist, okay, because there was a third one. It was a TV movie. It was really bad. But the first two of those, there's people who are like, oh my god, the second one's way better because it's a lot more campier, I guess. But then like you also have people like me who I'm just like, no, both of them are cinematic pieces of art. Like literally, they're so good, like so funny, so silly, like perfect. Anyway. But full
disclosure, I have not seen either of the Brady Bunch movies, so hopefully that doesn't get me kicked off of this podcast.
It's been so nice talking to you, Travis, but I think we're gonna have to end this. Goodbye, everybody. Oh god, you need to watch them if you at all were interested in the Bradys or any of that kind of stuff, or just had a cursory understanding of them. Those movies are just chef's kiss, really. Enough about those 70s fuckers. We're going to get into these fuckers, okay? So we have the Addams Family Values film. This came out November 19th of 1993. So a couple days, before this, when you're hearing this today, is when it would have been released. Actually, I guess, technically, it is just turned, goddamn, what is it now? It's just turned 30, I guess. So happy birthday, Addams Family Values. I didn't even plan that. Oh. Look at me.
Happy birthday, indeed. Wow, so many movies that are celebrating 30 years this year.
Isn't it crazy?
Wild.
Oh, I know. Oh, God. Anyway, but I didn't even plan that out. That's wonderful. This is about a runtime of 94 minutes. This budget is $47 million, which is crazy. We could talk a little bit about the first movie and how that kind of comes into it as well. And this is also a Paramount movie. So if you have Paramount Plus / Showtime, I guess, like you might be able to watch it because it might be on there because we're recording in spooky season. You're hearing this the next month after, but I'm sure you can find it somewhere.
It should just be a staple in anyone's DVD, Blu-ray movie collection. So I would say just go buy it. You can probably get the 2-pack. Like I'm sure there's a 2-pack for it.
I have the 2-pack of the Brady Bunch movie, so there's probably a 2-pack of this as well. So I would venture to say, But opening weekend ranking gross, this was actually at number 1. The weekend it came out with $14,117,545. And then overall, it made about $48,919,043, kind of a thing. So overall, I mean. Kind of bombed at the box office, technically, if you want to talk that way. However, though, I think this movie actually did a little bit better critically. If I'm not mistaken, I believe this was nominated for an Oscar in some way, and I don't even think I'm making that up. I think that's actual reality.
Academy Award, I know it was up for Best Art Direction.
Yes, that's what it was. It did not win, unfortunately. What a tragedy.
Yeah. And then Anjelica Huston was also nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Actress.
I love that. Yeah.
Musical picture.
Comedy. Yeah. For comedy. Yes. But so we're looking at about I think around a 74% or 75% on Rotten Tomatoes or so, which is the critic score. And then the audience score, I'm looking that up right now, actually. Because I think critics actually did kind of like this movie. They were like, "Oh, actually, it's pretty decent." 75% on Rotten Tomatoes, and then what was this other one? I want to see what the audience has thought of it. 63%. So actually, audiences are like so about it, I guess. This is based off of about 250,000 ratings from people. But the 75%, it's a certified fresh technically, and that's off of like 114 reviews from critics. So that's cool. Love that for them. But yeah, so I mean, it's a little bit about that, and then also, wait a minute, on Letterboxd, like I always see what the people on Letterboxd think of this too, because I feel like that's also telling of like how a movie is. I just watched this actually for a movie starring your crush, and we'll talk about that in later detail. But this is about a 3.7 out of 5, I guess, on Letterboxd. So the people have spoken, and I think they tend to enjoy this. But yeah,
man, this person thinks it's a 5-star film, but I don't use Letterboxd the way everybody else seems to use it. I either love it, like it, or I hate it. Well, not hate it, but like didn't like it or didn't love it. So I'm like, if I love it, it's 5 stars with the little like, all the things. If I liked it, I just like it, and then if not, I not. But yeah,
that's fair.
So.
Yeah, that's fair. But yeah. So we'll talk about the cast and crew of the movie in a little bit. So we have Barry Sonnenfeld, who is the director of this movie. He also directed the first movie as well. But he also did a little movie called Men in Black. I don't know if you've heard of it. Did that film. Also did Wild Wild West, which fun thing, because I think it is turning 30 next year. I might also be covering it on the podcast next year. So be look up for that. Will Smith being in a West. Hell yeah. But anyway,
I've never seen that. I've never seen.
I haven't either. I haven't either. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway, then we have I will also say, I don't talk about the producers or anything. This is a Scott Rudin production. Boo. Ugh. Gross. Horrid. He's also gay too, so that makes it worse. I talked about earlier in October, I talked about Trick or Treat. Lovely, wonderful episode, lovely movie. But boo, Bryan Singer, hate you. It makes it worse when you're a gay person, where you're just like, we don't claim these people. Just see him, Kevin Spacey, none of these people. We all think they're trash. Okay, like just saying. And that's right. I'm speaking for all the gays out there, all queer, everybody. But yeah. Anyway, but Scott Rudin, okay. He produced a lot of stuff, so whatever. But Paul Rudnick is the guy who actually did this. Love that. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he is an openly gay man. So that's one win, at least. One win. He, of course, is the writer who I think went uncredited, went under a pseudonym, but he is the guy who technically wrote or partly wrote Sister Act, which is cool. He also did the movie Jeffrey, which I just recently watched. It's on Peacock. It's kind of fun. It has Steven Weber in it and a couple different people in it. It's a fun little movie. It's based off of a play. In and Out. Have you ever seen In and Out, Travis, with Kevin Kline in it and Joan Cusack?
Oh, I've not, but I highly enjoy Sister Act and Sister Act 2.
Oh, don't worry, because we're also little teaser, everybody. We might be doing Sister Act 2 on the podcast soon, so that'll be fun. But yeah, but he did In and Out. I think In and Out is so fun. So the basic idea is that Kevin Kline, you know who Kevin Kline is, right? Oh, he is from A Fish Called Wanda. And he is, anyway, he's this guy. He won an Academy Award. And he plays a teacher in a small town in Illinois or Indiana. His student, who is played by Matt Damon or one of those people, Matt Dillon. I think, yeah. Joan Cusack is his like fiance, and what ends up happening, spoiler alert for In and Out, I guess, but not really. It's the whole point of the movie. Matt Dillon says that his English teacher, played by Kevin Kline, is gay at the Oscars after he wins an Oscar, and then everyone's like, oh no, oh my god, like Mr. Whatever his name is gay or whatever, and then he's like, oh wait, no, I'm not, but it's just so funny. Literally, Joan Cusack was nominated for an Oscar for it. I think she should have won. I think she's fabulous, but she's not Debbie Jelinski fabulous in that movie, but she is pretty good. I really do like her. But yeah, go check out In and Out, everybody. It's so fun, so silly and lovely. Kind of a first movie for Lauren Ambrose from Yellow Jackets and 6 Feet Under and all that. Alexander Holden as well. So many icons. Sean Hatosi from The Faculty. He's in it. He's one of her students. It's crazy. Yeah, iconic movie. Love it. I'll probably cover it at some point. He also did. I don't know if you.
I'm adding it to my list. I'm adding it to my list.
Please do. It's a fun gay movie. Tom Selleck is there. This is an In and Out minute, but it's fine. Yeah, he also did the really, really horrible Stepford Wives remake. Which, have you ever seen that movie ever?
Nope. I'm pretty sure. I feel like I've seen about like 10 movies, and I've just watched them on repeat for years and years.
That's fine.
Years,
that's apropos. That really makes sense. That was a Frank Oz movie. Also, Frank Oz directed In and Out as well. He worked with Paul Rudnick a couple times, but who apparently Scott Rudnick is fine. Frank Oz is not the best of directors from what I've heard. Whatever, but that Stepford Wives remake sucked. But it's a different take on the story. It's a lot more comedic than the original is. So I don't know what the hell they were going for, but okay. Nicole Kidman's there. That's fun. On Nicole, heartbreak feels good in a place like this. But yeah, so that's the writer and director. Then the composer is Mark Shaman. I don't know if you ever heard of him. You know, he only has like literal Tonys and like, you know, like kind of is very known for Broadway and music and everything like that.
I'm a big fan of the score, but you know, I'm terrible about keeping up with composers, the big ones that have done like all the movies, like Danny Elfman, for example.
Yes, so. Right. So Mark Shaman, he is the guy he's done quite a bit. He is the guy who did the music for Misery, Stephen King. He also did the First Wives Club as well. He was that guy. He did the South Park movie, being Bigger, Longer, and Uncut. He also did that. So he gave us, I'm sure, was the one who wrote Kyle's Mom's a Bitch and Blame Canada and all those fire things. But he also did Hairspray. He was the one who did all of the music for the Hairspray musical, and him and Mark Platt, who is, I believe, Ben Platt's literal father. Anyway, but yeah, so they literally won a Tony for doing that music and everything. I think they also did Avenue Q, if I'm not mistaken, all of that kind of stuff. If I'm not mistaken, I feel like they did the Book of Mormon too. I mean, again, please pull me up on all of these things if I'm wrong, but I feel like he probably did that like at some point. Or I think it was that one of the guys from Avenue Q ended up doing the music for Book of Mormon. Maybe that's what I'm thinking. Whatever. Anyway, fact check me all you want, because I don't do that research up in here. Okay, half the time. Anyway, but yeah. And then our cinematographer is Donald Peterman. He is the same guy who did When a Stranger Calls. He shot that movie with Carol Kane, who is also in this movie. Fun fact. Flashdance with Kevin Bacon. He also shot that. He also shot Men in Black, so he has also worked with Barry Sonnenfeld again, which you'll kind of see as sort of a little bit of a pattern. And then he also did How the Grinch Stole Christmas, which is kind of fun too. So he also shot that as well. And then we have a duo. Editing this movie. So we have Arthur Schmidt and Jim Miller. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, a lot of these credits that I'm going to be listing are from Mr. Schmidt. But so he did a lot of like, and again, this makes sense for this. You know, he did Jaws 2. He did a lot of the Back to the Future movies as well. He edited a lot of those. He did Who Framed Roger Rabbit. He did Forrest Gump. So Arthur Schmidt was very much, if I'm not mistaken, I think he was the one who did a lot of those movies, who edited them. Again, Jim Miller, I think he had like a I think he came maybe from Barry Sonnenfeld's like kind of camp, if you will. And he has done things with him since then. But yeah, Arthur Schmidt definitely did quite a bit. A lot of prolific stuff that people are, you know, and again, it all ties back to these movies sometimes, because you're like, oh, Christopher Lloyd's in this movie. He was also literally in Back to the Future. So like,
like looking at Arthur's list of movies as an editor, like you said, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Back to the Future, Love those. Death Becomes Her. The Birdcage. I mean, so many fun movies. Yeah, and Christopher
makes
Lloyd,
sense.
Judge Doom. Like Judge Doom is like part of my personal style inspiration. So
I love that for you. I do. Joanna Cassidy, just in general, is part of my just wanting to be that style. Just specifically. But you know, it's all good. And then, of course, the actors in this movie. So you have, it's interesting because in this movie, again, I haven't seen the first one. So the second one, you have the Addams, the family themselves. But then you also have like the campers as well, and not even campers, like the camp staff and stuff like that, which are really just Peter McNichol and Christine Baranski. Which honestly, this movie, just having Christine Baranski in it, deserves a 3 stars no matter what, for anything.
I'm so glad you're bringing that up, because upon like this rewatch, I love her character, and this was one of the first times where like I did the rewatch with my headphones on my iPad, just trying to take notes, and like it's just so much about her. I'm like, she just pops off the screen.
Like you already like off the rip, 3 stars, period. 3 out of 5, at least, just for having Christine Baranski there. This movie is also like a 4.5, 5 for me. Like, it's really fun and great. But like, no, just having Christine Baranski, 3. So Birdcage, 3. You know, Jeffrey, 3. She's in there for like a little bit. So it's, she's such an icon. I love her so much. Anyway.
And her zaniness, I feel like,
oh my God,
I make it sound as if like I'm like a part of these huge circles, which I'm not. But like, I guess I've just really come to appreciate like what she does for that character and how she can match. Like, is it Peter McNichol?
I think it's Peter McNichol. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see if I can get his name wrong. Wait a minute. It's Peter something. I'm almost certain it's Peter McNichol. Like, let me just
Peter McNichol as Gary, but like
there we go. Yeah,
its own level of zaniness, but like she's like holds her own.
It's perfect.
There's something about her where it's just like the way she delivers things, like her, whether you like it or not. Like the way she executes that quote, like I've said that quote in like real life at various points. It's legit
perfect. Put it like literally just put it in a museum. It's fucking amazing. It's so good.
Yeah, and the facial expression when she delivers it, love it.
Yeah, it's so good. But back to the other cast members as well. So with the Addams family, actually, so you have like and funny enough, like I didn't share this with you, Travis, because I just ran out of time. But I have my document that I kind of keep all this stuff together with. So like a lot of my stuff is just like, you know, okay, Anjelica Huston. I could literally just put like for their other credits, I'm like, she's Anjelica Huston. Like, do I have to explain? Like, you know, but of course, Anjelica Huston, she was in The Witches. She either has won or nominated for an Academy Award for at least something, if not already won one, actually. I mean, she's amazing, and she's Anjelica Huston. Come on, like, you know, she plays Morticia. As you said, Raul Julia, who unfortunately passed away not too long after this film. He was in, you said Street Fighter. He was in different also action movies, I think, as well. And he originated this role in the movies, which is great too. Which I think he will very well be known for obviously the rest of, you know, existence, if you will, because he does such a good job, I think, as well.
And I think like when it comes to like the Addams, there's been so many iterations at this point now, right? This TV show, these movies. What Wednesday was now a thing, the animated, and like
right.
Raul and Anjelica, like they are my Gomez and Morticia.
Absolutely,
that's who I think of. Like I'm of that group. That's not to say that no one else is doing a fantastic job. They of course are, but like I love them, and that's why they are the tattoos on my leg. So. Oh,
completely, yes, absolutely, and really, truly, it makes total sense. Yeah, we'll talk about the TV show and a few things like that as well. But yeah, and then Christopher Lloyd, of course. So he is. This is another thing. I have not watched the Back to the Future movies. Okay. I just haven't done it. So I know he's Doc technically. So there's that. He will always be the guy from Clue for me because I love that movie. So obviously like he has to be like, he's just that. But I mean, he's very prolific, very known, you know, and he does Fester And it's funny because people are like, wait, Christopher Lloyd's in this movie? I'm like, yeah, he plays Fester in both of the movies. Like, that is him. Like, and people are like, wait, what? Again, I think he seems like a talented actor, yeah, even though I haven't seen a ton of his work. But, but yeah, definitely like Christopher Lloyd, big name. Joan Cusack, I mean, again, she's Joan Cusack. Like, from being the one girl that Long Duk Dong was into in 16 Candles to being Oscar nominated at least twice now, which is amazing. She's had such a great career, and we'll talk about Debbie because she is the absolute shining example in this movie of what kind of, I feel like she knows what film she's in. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's what's perfect about her. But yeah, Joan Cusack plays Debbie in this movie. I love her. She's an in and out. Like I said, she was in a Disney movie. She's been an Ice Princess with Michelle Trachtenberg and just like everything. And I want to see her in more stuff. And ageism in Hollywood sucks. And also like misogyny in Hollywood sucks too, I'm sure as well. Oh God, she's such an icon though. I love her. And her brother's not too bad either.
I would love to see her get pulled into the Chucky universe. Like
you know what? Like
I love that series, love that TV series, love the movies, and would just love to see her come in. And even if it was like going toe to toe with Jennifer Tilly or just something, I feel like how she did Debbie, like that type of character, would be so much fun.
I absolutely can agree with you on that, Travis, because like I think she plays so well these kind of like over the top-ish characters in a way, and I really do like that. So, oh my God, Don Mancini, get on it! Come on, what are we doing? Come on, let's move and shake, And again, also, so Christina Ricci is in this movie as Wednesday. She originated the role in the movies. Again, she's literal Christina Ricci. Like, come on. Yellow Jackets, Now and Then. I know her from Now and Then. I love her in that movie. I think she's so good. Have you ever seen Now and Then?
No, but I loved her in Casper as a kid.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah. I mean, that's probably where I first... Actually, you know what? I take back my thing I said earlier. That's how I knew her. What the hell am I... What's wrong with me? Like, come on now. But yeah, I mean, but like Cursed, which is like a bad movie, but kind of great though. Like, I watched this... I won't say it's awful because it might be great for some people. I watched her in a movie called Pumpkin. Have you ever heard of this movie?
No,
don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's a movie where she plays a sorority sister who falls in love with a developmentally disabled person, I think, who is like, again, differently abled. So I don't know. It's not that good of a movie, to be honest, but she's cool. I like her. It's kind of over the top and camp a little bit, but like it feels like a weird John Waters movie, honestly, kind of sort of, but not as good. Unfortunately. Oops. Oh, anyway. But anyway,
well,
so yeah.
I'm sure it's still worth checking out, right? Like a group of people worked hard on it. So everyone should at least see if that is up for their taste.
Wonderful diplomatic answer from you. I do appreciate that. Carol Kane's in this movie. She actually replaced Judith Malina from the first movie for whatever reason. Carol Kane, icon, legend. I mean, When a Stranger Calls. She was in The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt on that TV show. I will always know her as Miss Sherwood from Jawbreaker. Like, she will always be that to me. Obviously.
Jawbreaker.
Oh my God. Well, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. There's that. I mean, so she did, but do you know about Judith Malina? Do you know a little bit about her and what her kind of life was a little bit?
No, I'm not up on that.
So she played the original Granny in this, first film that they did. But she was also, so she's since passed away, I believe. But she was actually, fun little fact, she's grandma, but she was in like Dog Day Afternoon, Awakenings, things like that. But do you know who her husband was? Have you ever seen Poltergeist 2?
Maybe like once. Like that, the first one like terrified me as a kid.
Mm-hmm. So Poltergeist 2 has the guy, he's Kane, he's the preacher guy, and God is in his holy temple. You ever hear about that or ever see it?
Maybe I didn't see that one. I mean, full disclosure, like for many, many years as a kid, like did watch horror. Was like, I mean, I was a kid that was like terrified of the Haunted Mansion at Disney World, which in hindsight,
Okay.
it's like, come on, kid, like get it
That's
together.
fair. That's fair.
This is a fun ride.
The guy who did that was Julian Beck, who was actually actively dying of cancer at the time they shot that. Unfortunately, he's like an icon in the horror community, like of doing that role. And that was he was literally, they were married. Funny enough, this is also kind of getting into the queer of it. I think also Julian Beck was a little queer. He was kind of bisexual, I believe. So it's interesting. He ended up marrying, Judith Molina, of course, and they were long-term partners. But I just think it's really interesting that, like, kind of throws into there. But yes, the first grandmother in the Addams Family movie, that is her, and she got replaced, unfortunately. I'm sure she does a good job. Again, I have to actually watch that movie. So, and then of course, we talked about like Christine Baranski, of course, and Mercedes McNabb playing Amanda and all that. But there's a certain young man who's now an older man in a way, who is my husband, David Krumholtz. God, well, let's just turn it to like the David Krumholtz appreciation hour. I don't know.
I like how you're glowing when you started talking about him.
I love him. Like, I think what it was is like the Santa Claus, because I watched that movie when I was a kid, and Santa Claus 2 and stuff. And he just did something for me as a kid where I was like, wow, he's like attractive to me, and I didn't know that he was in this movie for the longest time. And then finding out, like, okay, so he's this kid, Joel Glicker, but he is also obviously Bernard from the Santa Claus and the other Santa Claus movies. He is Michael in 10 Things I Hate About You, the guy who Joseph Gordon-Levitt meets for the first time at the school. He was in Numbers. He was just in Oppenheimer. That's fun, so like, yeah. But I mean, God, he's my husband in my head. I love him. I would hope that he knows, even though he's an absolute straight man with children, I would hope that he knows that there are a certain subsect of young gay men who just are attracted to him. And I hope he embraces that and appreciates it. Like, honestly.
I would hope that too. I would hope that for anybody, right? I mean, like, how can you not feel appreciated knowing that someone really admires you like that? But,
yeah, and that you were an awakening for me, David Krumholtz. So, I mean, there you go. I mean, nothing else to say about that, really. He's my husband, so I have to be a good spouse to him.
I have to admit, I'm embarrassed to say I didn't realize he was the dude from Santa Claus until like way later in life, because he was just one of those actors that I didn't like keep up with. And I feel like my Addams Family versus like my Santa Claus, like,
that's fair.
I just never put it together, and I was like, oh, he's that dude. Cool.
He is that dude, which is weird because that was only like 2 years after this movie. Like, literally, like, he looks kind of young in this movie, and then in the Santa Claus he looks older, which is just such a mind fuck, weirdly. But I don't know, the puberty can do a number on you, I guess. I don't know. I'm still waiting to hit it, it's fine. But whatever. But but that's that. But yeah, it's a little bit of our cast and crew and anything. Do you have anybody else that you want to kind of shout out with like this cast or anything you could think of?
No one really to shout out. I'm glad we have to talk about Christine Baranski a little bit, because again, she's like, what a standout.
Amazing.
And it just wasn't, I guess, at the forefront of my mind from other viewings of it, because she's just like so like into the role. She's kind of what I would equate her to being like the bass in a band, right? Like, she's been that part of it where like the bass is there. It's holding down things, and like that's just how awesome she's doing with her acting and playing the character. So
absolutely. And and then it's also fun with, like, again, Mercedes McNabb playing Amanda. Barry Sonnenfeld, the director, plays Joel's dad, which is kind of fun. Like, that's just like, he's just like the put upon like Jewish father. Like, that's fair.
I do have, this is like I don't even remember the dude's name, but this is like a small thing, but Amanda's dad, the actor's name I'm blanking on, he goes on to play the dad in Drop Dead Gorgeous.
Yes, he absolutely does.
And he also went on to be in Mom. Like, I love my husband and I have been rewatching,
Oh, nice.
not rewatching, like watching Mom for the first time. So like seeing him, like, oh, there's that dude from different iconic roles.
Yes, he's amazing. He is. I'm looking it up right now. I got the Google right in front of me. Hold on. Wait a minute. Who is this guy? Wait a minute. What the hell is his name? Like, where the hell is he? Oh my God. Sam McMurray is who you're talking about.
Yeah, that's it.
He's amazing. He is Lester Lehman. That's correct. And do you like Mom? I have never watched that show. Is it actually worth watching?
Oh, I rave about Mom to everybody. Like Anna Faris, amazing.
Similarly to I do that with Schitt's Creek to everybody I watch, to everyone I run into. Okay, so Mom is actually decent. It's not like the stupid like no hate, but like Big Bang Theory. I don't think it's that funny. But okay, so Mom is actually good. Okay,
like,
great.
Love Mom. Allison Janney. Her character isn't exactly like her character from Drop Dead Gorgeous. But like her, Anna Faris, the whole cast. I mean, just not an exaggeration to say I'm literally laughing out loud pretty much every episode. Go check it out. It's a blast. Just having the duo that is Oscar award-winning Allison Janney. She had a big ass then. She has a big ass now. Can one of you boys give me a ride home? Don't fall for it. She lives 2 trailers down, so it'll be real easy. Sick. Jesus, and like her in I, Tonya is also really good too. But anyway, and then Anna Faris just being Anna Faris. Also, fuck Chris Pratt, fuck him forever, hate him. It was his fault. You already know it was his fault. You already know. Like, how do you divorce that? Like, how? I'm not even into women, and I would never divorce Anna Faris ever. Yeah, cheers, big up to Anna Faris. But I do want to add, Mimi Kennedy is also in Mom, and I love Mimi Kennedy from Dharma and Greg. A kid raised on '90s sitcoms, but now we're kind of like off here. We're like way off base from Addams Family Values.
Oh, absolutely
fine,
no.
Right? It's totally fine. Anybody?
Absolutely, this show has no semblance of a plot whatsoever, and that's fine with me. But yeah, those are like kind of the standouts. Oh, and then like Nathan Lane's in this movie, which is really fun. Like he just has a little cameo in it, like just like random shit, dude.
I'm glad you said that. I have this like burned in memory as a kid of seeing it and being like, oh, that's Timon's voice. Like, holy smokes, that's like what Timon looks like from The Lion King. So right, and then of course he and Christy Baranski would then partner back up in the Birdcage, of course. Birdcage, yeah,
amazing. So I mean, God, so good. Also, if you didn't already know, Lurch is also cool. He's also part of the family in some way. He is actually don't know if people want to watch this on Netflix, but he is actually the villain, I guess, in the adaptation of Gerald's Game on Netflix with the mom from the Spy Kids movies. I don't remember her name. But that's her, and they adapted that book into the movie, and he plays, because that fucker's like tall and like kind of weird looking. No offense, but like it's true. But yeah, so it makes total sense. It makes total sense. But anyway, so enough with the cast, because we could really just keep going about it. But yeah, it's fine with me. But we want to talk a little bit, though, I think, about, all right, so the Addams Family, like, how did this come to be, really? Now, of course, this is a sequel, so we will talk a little bit about the first movie, and you might have some information about that, Travis, just because you have seen it. But I'm just pulling this information. So we got to talk a little bit about a man named Charles Addams, talking about this whole series. So he started his career as a cartoonist for the New Yorker, very fancy publication, He did a sketch of a window washer that ran in February 6th of 1932. So he started off as a cartoonist. And the first Addams Family cartoon was published in 1938 in the New Yorker. It was a 1-panel little gag thing. So really, it just started off as kind of like, like Blondie, Dennis the Menace, insert whatever other Peanuts, you know what I mean? Like The fact that they haven't done like a Peanuts movie also is like weird to me. Like, why have they not done a live action one of it? I'm surprised kind of at this point, but who knows?
You just got to manifest that. If you want that, you got to start manifesting it.
I know, like, I'm just surprised since they're rebooting every fucking thing else, but whatever. He became a regular contributor to The New Yorker, and he drew about 1,300 cartoons for them between then and his death in 1958. And so 58 of these 1,300 cartoons would feature the Addams Family, which were all done around 1940s, 1950s. He also like did a couple different like cartoons as well. Most notably, he did this thing called Dear Dead Days, a family album. So like pretty much what happened though is that after the television show launched, they pretty much were like, you can't run these cartoons anymore because now this is owned by like a studio, I guess, because isn't Hollywood fun? But anyway, but yeah, also Ray Bradbury kind of got involved with like doing a similar thing as well to the Addams, kind of sort of. So Ray Bradbury plagiarizing, not really, he's dead now, but like whatever. But yeah, no. So that's talking about just like the baseline of pretty much this started out as literally like the Peanuts cartoon, like in a comic strip, and it was in the New Yorker. And for some God knows what reason, they decided in 1960, I guess really because I would venture to say, and I don't know if you have any thoughts on this either, Travis, but I would venture to say that, you know, after the advent of television and all of this kind of stuff, like I would think that you're just trying to figure out things that you can either adapt or turn into a television show. And so for something like the Addams Family, it kind of makes sense to like take something, which is why like Dennis the Menace and the Peanuts, obviously, and stuff like that, then turned into a television show. Do you have anything to kind of add from that, of any sort of research you may have done of like, why did the TV show come to be?
I mean, not really anything from like research, but I think as a creative, when you're trying new media, to make it a little bit easier for yourself, sometimes like, why not try to like take a thing that already exists and see if it can then work in this new space. So
sure.
It's not surprising to me that they would leverage the comic strip and turn it into a television show. So
yeah. Absolutely. I mean, that's the only thing I could think about why there would be a TV show, because you do have to talk about the TV show where you talk about the Addams a little bit. Also, there is something to be said with somehow, some way, and again, this is not a Munsters podcast or anything either, but the fact that you have the Addams Family and the Munsters that came out almost at the same time, really, is just like, okay, fair enough. This is fine. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how that came to be. I don't know about the Munsters necessarily. Did you ever watch the Munsters when you were a kid or anything like that? Or you kind of were more Addams Family?
So I was a big fan of the Munsters TV show as a kid, but I'm trying to think like obviously that aired originally before I existed.
Right.
But loved it. I think not, I guess without trying to get too deep, but anytime where it was like this like other type family or whatever, right? Like the Munsters and the Addams Family, like they're this macabre family, whatever, but it's just like, it's their way of life to them. Like, it just is what it is. And like the outside world just doesn't get it at times. I think that was one of those things that just drew me to these properties where, especially as a queer person, right? Like you kind of feel like you're other, you're different, etc. But it's just so normal to me. So, so little soapbox moment there, but love the Munsters. And I think because I didn't have a movie at the time, I gave the Munsters the grace that I did. Where I, of course, having the movies for Addams Family, I was like, well, I'm not watching the TV show.
Right.
So but I have since gone on to watch the TV show. It is fantastic. So,
yeah, and of course that's so that would be John Astin, who is the one who who did Gomez on the TV show. Carolyn Jones playing Morticia as well. John Astin is, I think, from Baltimore or lived or is either from here or something like that. He went to Johns Hopkins down in the city, so that's cool. And then also Carolyn Jones, I just watched her a couple days ago in Invasion of the Body Snatchers. She's in that movie, and just being an icon in general. She's Morticia, of course. But I mean, this movie really, like, from what I can kind of gather, so again, it's a sequel. So the first movie, I really think it probably came from, similarly to something like the Brady Bunch movie. I think this show in particular was put into syndication, and because it got syndicated to the point it did, where people just kind of knew what the Addams Family was, even though I think it was only on, like, it wasn't on for a long time. It was only on for 2 seasons. You know what I mean? Like, it was kind of popular, but like, it didn't go forever, you know what I mean? So it's like, but it feels like it did because, it was on television for a while.
That's the power of syndication, right? You're like, oh, this is like so many, and it's like, oh, it really, I mean, Monsters totally the same way.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it just came out of syndication. Like in the 70s, they did like a little crossover with Scooby-Doo cartoons, like where they had that as well, kind of, sort of. It was just trying to breathe life into this stuff as well. The franchise did kind of go dead in the 80s a little bit as well. But apparently the retirement of William Shawn, who was a guy who worked at the New Yorker, I guess he owned it or something. It allowed a little bit of a brief return of the New Yorker cartoons, even though Charles Addams died not too long, after that, really. But talking about this first film, though, not that this is really a big thing about this first film or anything. But if anything, it's important to note that I think because of this popularity that came from, people watching this movie a little bit, being aware of it, that's how the movie got to be. But also, this first movie had a bit of a troubled history. Do you know anything about this? Because I'll just talk about it. But if you knew anything about it at all, since you have seen it.
The troubled history, the only thing I really remember is it had to do with Fester. And how, like, Christina Ricci ended up, the cast was like, yo, you need to, like, speak for the cast and have Fester, I guess, spoiler alert, like, have Fester, like, be the real Fester, and not, like, some make-believe thing. So, I know that was, like, with the story in terms of the first movie and how it would end.
Right. So pretty much like this production, what happened was it was developed at Orion Pictures, which I'm pretty sure they distributed the first movie, if I'm not mistaken, but then Paramount took this and they ended up releasing it. The first movie went $5 million over budget due to constant rewrites during shooting. So that's fun. Also, there were some health problems of people who were involved. That's Raul Julia. He was going through some things with his health at the time. So that also kind of compounded. And just overall kind of stressed filming with Sonnenfeld. He had done stuff before, but I think this it really delayed a lot of stuff. So the production costs of this movie, I mean, like, it went from $25 million initially to then it went to $30 million of a budget, which isn't exactly good. And also Orion Pictures, I don't even think are around anymore, but they had made flop after flop. And that's not good when you have a studio, because you need to have some money coming in.
Gotta make that coin, right?
You do have to make some coin. Otherwise, you're going to be like Vestron Pictures or something like that. They decided to so Orion started that first movie, but then actually gave it to Paramount, who then completed it and handled the distribution of it. So I was actually wrong. These are both Paramount movies, but it started off as an Orion movie though. But then Orion did also distribute the film internationally through Columbia Pictures though.
Yep.
And again, I think they're out of business now, but again, it's one of those things. But this movie actually did make a whole lot of money, which was great, lovely, which is why they pretty much got a sequel actually. But yeah, I guess really from what I gather, Scott Rudin, he just pitched an idea to the studio being like, hey, let's make a movie based off of this. So it really just came from like, let's do it. And the studio thought that the cartoons would make a good movie, and Fox would ultimately not make the movie though. Orion, who already owned the rights to the Addams Family, wouldn't sell the property, as they were trying to do a TV show actually as well. So again, this is a little bit of history on the first movie, but it's good to know, just good to have. And also property rights, not the same thing, but like kind of like Bram Stoker's Dracula. Like, you know how like Dracula Stoker's wife owned the rights after he died, which is why the whole thing with Nosferatu happened of like, you know, you can't make this movie because it's pretty much Dracula, but like I'm not letting you these rights. I don't think the same thing happened, but again, this was owned by Charles Addams' wife. So again, I think that whoever ended up getting the rights, I think there was a little bit of a battle with that. Because again, I mean, it's one of those things where what the hell do you do? Like you're trying to make this movie, or you're trying to do this, maybe do a reboot TV show, which they ended up doing anyway, really. But I think those actually, if I'm not mistaken, came after these movies came out. So like, what do we know? Right.
I remember the cartoon. Like, there was a cartoon for a while.
Oh, yes, there was. You're right. Yeah, you're definitely right. But yeah, I think a lot of that just happened. Again, a lot of this information you can find online, pretty much, of like the troubled history that this had, which is crazy because, again, people sometimes really like that first movie, and that's awesome. Good for them.
One thing that was interesting to learn, we forgot Tim Burton, of all people, was approached to direct the first film, and had said thanks, but no thanks. And obviously that's a full circle moment for Tim now being a part of the Wednesday TV show. So
that's right.
It's interesting, like, just to kind of think like, I wonder what that would have looked like way back in the day,
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, no, totally. I do kind of wonder that sometimes too, where it's like, how would that have been? And it would have been a different film, perhaps, but I think it would have fit in his wheelhouse, if anything. So yeah, no, totally. But the basic idea, so we're actually getting to the film we're talking about now. But yeah, no, I think this movie really just came from the fact that the first one made a buttload of money, against all odds. And yeah, they were like, let's do a sequel. Why not? So that's all fun and dandy. And again, the writer of this movie, if I'm not mistaken, again, it was written by Paul Rudnick. So he was already aware of the first movie anyway. So he just kind of kept it moving and pushing, which is good. Not too much interesting history about this movie that I can think in terms of just like production history. The movie itself, the name of the movie is actually a little bit of a play on a speech that was made by Dan Quayle in 1992, which was Reflections on Urban America, where he talks about how he blamed the 1992 Los Angeles riots on a breakdown of, quote, family values. Because, that's exactly why LA rioted. That's why the LA riots happened. Absolutely. What do we know? Not systematic racism or pre-release brutality or any of those kinds of things. No, a breakdown of family values. Absolutely. What the hell? It's so dumb. Anyway. So yeah, but I think it's funny that this movie does have that kind of tongue in cheek, Addams Family Values. That's exactly what it is. And it's a lot more about the family in this one anyway. So, but yeah, totally.
And I do love the fact that, again, like this family unit, I mean, it's not like they're like lecturing anybody by any means, but I feel like you can watch the movie and get like, this is a tight group, and there is just certain, like, there's a level of respect. There's this, there's that. And it just like works so well. So I think the title is fantastic.
I think it's so good.
Especially given the tongue-in-cheek reference.
Right. And I wonder this a little bit. So we'll get into a little bit of a plot and just a breakdown of characters or whatever we want to do. But why do you think, as somebody who has seen both of these movies, I guess, like I said, to me, this always feels like, do you feel like the first movie is as campy as the second one is? Because I don't know if I feel that.
That's a great question. I'm sure, and I've definitely seen Values more than I've seen the original. But I want to say, like, I'm sure there's campy elements of it. I'm sure it's there. But I would say that I think because of what's in this movie and the particular scenes that are in this that just like really help like elevate it so much more, which makes, I think, it stick a little harder for people in terms of the campiness. Of course, there's what about Debbie's scene at the end. So that's a good question. Boy,
I don't know.
I wish I would have rewatched the original prior to this as well.
No, I think like it's interesting because it follows the family, as like, it's that. But I feel like, I don't know what it is, but like this other movie just feels like, I don't know, it just feels a lot more campy. Maybe it's also because like, from what I understand about the first movie, that movie is a lot more about Fester and like him trying to figure out if he's actually an Addams or whatever the hell and all that kind of stuff. And it's not focused too much on, it's focused on the family, but like, you don't have as much with like Christina Ricci and Jimmy Workman, you know what I mean? Or anything like that. It's kind of more into this, but like this movie, you have both the Debbie storyline with Fester, but you also have the storyline with Wednesday and Pugsley, which I think is really interesting, which I think also just like, gives to, maybe that's why children really latched onto this one too, because you're following kids that are of your similar age, perhaps, so that might also be it as well, but yeah.
Well, and I think too, because of in the first one where it is this person who is not aware that he is Fester and is Fester. And there's that whole trying to, pull the rug out on the family because of trying to get the money and all the things that go with that. There's that family disconnect of them not being this tight family unit where here, I mean, I think one of the reasons why I like sequels so much, because it's like, we've established the characters, we know the players. And even though I saw this one first, it was like, it just dove right into things. I think my dog just like did like a yippee, like yawn sound. Did that come through?
It kind of did, but don't worry about it.
Now I'm dog distracted. What was I saying? So I guess
you were saying about like with this movie, with the first movie that is a little disconnected because of just like the plot with like Fester and all that. But this movie, I think you were going on that kind of like idea.
Yeah. So I guess not that the first one's like really disconnected, but I guess it's that tight unit where like, I mean, Fester's a part of it. We know Fester's a part of it. And it's there's so many stories are running with the different family members. Of course, Gomez has his own storyline going on with like what's happening with Fester, and of course, Hubert has a thing. Like, there's just so many things happening, and I don't know. I think I'm going to like a lost tangent now. So
no, you're fine. No, but it's true. I mean, I think like the reason, and also with that too, like these two movies, especially, I think they are, I don't know, like I think this movie in particular as well, like it is very much like you're following the whole family unit as a whole. And again, the first one is fine for what it is. It made a fuck ton of money, obviously, but I think you're able to latch on to it more. Again, to bring it back to the Brady Bunch movie again, there's people who are like, oh yeah, the second one is way campier. And it kind of is, but I think the first one sets out who these characters are. This is Gary Cole. This is Shelley Long doing what they're doing. This is what Christine Taylor and Jennifer Lee Cox is doing, all this stuff. But you're able to have more fun in the second movie. Because you already know the characters, you're already aware of that. And then throwing someone in like Joan Cusack to play this like weird, character, also having like the camp setting as well, with these like, which obviously is poking fun at stuff as well. I just think like it's really nicely written, and it's just like very funny, and it's just like, I don't know. It's a fun time, but yeah. I would say that for sure. But if you had to, though, so Travis, I'm giving you a challenge a little bit. If you had to explain like what Addams Family Values is about in particular, it was somebody like you act as if somebody has never seen it before. How would you describe the plot of this movie, if anything, if somebody's never seen it before?
So if I was gonna describe this as someone who's never seen it before, I would say there's this movie about a tight family unit, that, they get, I don't want to say invaded. That sounds really dramatic, but they have a new addition, and therefore it requires them to bring in a babysitter. This babysitter by chance just happens to, have some ulterior motives. Yes. She is a serial killer. I probably wouldn't say that right out of the gate. We'd probably just leave with the ulterior motives.
Right.
And because of that, she has to make the appropriate moves to get variables out of her way so she can get to her goal, which is getting married to the man with the money, being Fester.
Yep. And
then, family, but you can't keep a good family down, I suppose, right? At least in this movie.
Yes.
So yeah. And then fun be had all as those events play out.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I would say that's a pretty decent thing. I guess if I was to explain this to anybody or anything like that, I would say, okay, the Addams family are this like kooky, macabre family who lives in a big house. As you stated, they just had a new baby, and because of the new baby, they have a babysitter that they're finding. They find Debbie from the agency. Again, Debbie has those other motives. As a result of this, she is doing her own scheming and scamming to the top. While this is all happening, you also have the two children, Wednesday and Pugsley, who kind of, against their wishes, get sent to a camp called Camp Chippewa, and hilarity ensues from there as well. But then they come back together as a family unit to defeat the evil but fabulousness that is Debbie Jelinski. And then that's the Addams Family Values movie, I guess, like, really, truly.
And there's a musical number. Can't forget about
there is a musical number. You are very correct about that. That's right. But yeah. Yeah. I guess if anything, like I'll do like a literal good like 3 minutes. I'm not timing myself, but I'll give a little plot of just what this movie is, even though me and Travis did a great job at explaining it. But the basic idea is that Gomez and Morticia Addams, they hire a nanny named Debbie Jelinski to take care of their newborn son, Pubert, after their oldest siblings, Wednesday and Pugsley, failed attempt to kill him, because you can't have another baby in the house, for which Gomez and Morticia gently rebuke them. So they hire this nanny. Unbeknownst to them, she is a serial killer. Also spoilers, I guess, too. Who marries rich bachelors, and murders them to collect their inheritances. And after Debbie seduces Uncle Fester, Wednesday becomes suspicious of her intentions. And to maintain her cover, Debbie tricks Gomez and Morticia to believing that the kids want to go to a summer camp, which they're sent to. They're managed, this Camp Chippewa is managed by Gary and Becky Granger, and they're all cheerful and nice or whatever, and they're singled out by these counselors and the popular and snobbish girl Amanda Buckman for their macabre appearance and their behavior. Also, there's a boy named Joel Glicker, who's played by my husband, who is like an outcast as well. He becomes attracted to Wednesday. And also, in addition to this, Debbie and Fester actually get engaged and they become married. At the bachelorette party, Debbie is repulsed by these Addams family and their relatives. And she gives her undying devotion to him, saying, "Oh, actually, you can't be with your family. You need to like separate ties with them if they were going to be, married." She unsuccessfully, Debbie tries to kill Fester, but he ends up not dying. She tries like blowing him up in the mansion and all this stuff, but nothing seems to happen and nothing seems to, kill him for whatever reason. The baby has turned from a baby that has a mustache, who is like gray toned, to a regular baby with like curly hair and blue eyes, and this is horrible. And so disrupted family life. There's also a musical number, as you stated, at the camp. And pretty much Wednesday and Pugsley literally like they kind of do a massacre on this camp in a way, I guess, where, they rise up against these white privileged people, which I appreciate really, really much so.
They make people do some critical thinking about like what really happened.
They really do. Anyway, so they go back, they escape from the camp and all that. And then what ends up happening is that everyone figures out what's going on with Debbie. They're like, oh, like she's a crazy bitch pretty much. And Debbie takes them all hostage at the house, where she has a whole speech about, how she deserves and, her life and all this. Anyway, what ends up pretty much happening is Pubert ends up actually inadvertently killing Debbie, I think, through a fun Rube Goldberg series of events, as they're all like strapped to electric chairs and stuff like that. But yeah, it's always very nice. And then sometime later, it's Pubert's first birthday, and then they all get together, and it's really nice and wonderful. Joel is now part of the family because he's with Wednesday now, and it's really nice and cute. And everyone lives happily ever after, pretty much, I guess. Like, it's the plot. I would assume so. That's all you really need to know about with that.
Yeah, and there's a ton of one-liners along the way that
I got so many.
Use in life, like wish me luck, good luck.
It's so good. Like, I love it. So that's like the basic plot about what this Addams Family Values movie is about. I think like, are there any particular, we can always talk about Debbie, I guess, and we can talk about her as well, but is there any standout characters for you that, are there any standout characters that we haven't already kind of mentioned as well, that you'd want to talk about, or anything that just kind of stands out to you? Like, what is it about like Debbie that just makes her like the icon of this movie? Partly.
I guess in terms of other things we haven't talked about Thing.
Thing. Yeah.
The hand rolling around. I think before we get into the Debbie of it all, though, I'd love to just, touch on the dark humor. I think there's just so smart, so wise. This was actually one of the first times I caught when Debbie and Gomez are going down the steps after Debbie starts. And Morticia's like, I have all the important numbers, police, fire department, morgue. I never caught that she says morgue in that scene. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's, how funny. I love that line. We talked about the wish me luck. Well, that's Debbie's deal. But like when Wednesday and Pugsley are trying to off Hubert because that archaic family rule where they think one of the siblings has to die, when the whole guillotine thing happens and Hubert grabs the blade and Wednesday's just like, woe to the Republic. I've definitely said that out loud for like something that was wild. Not as much as I have. So I'm trying to think if there's any other like one-liners that I love.
Yeah.
Just looking through my notes because the we don't hug, like when it's mail call, and when they're like, oh, you're just shy, and Pugsy's like, I'm not shy, and Wednesday's like, we're contagious. I mean, like it's just so snappy, so to put them all on T-shirts, like they could have this movie could have its own line of
really could
its own shirts.
Yeah, I like some of the ones where we're talking about the dark humor of it all. Like, I think there's so many good ones. Like, for example, when they're going through all of the babysitting, like the nanny applicants, Cynthia Nixon's one of them. That's fun. But I love how like one of the last candidate they have has a puppet or whatever that she has, and like she's like, oh, let's clean our rooms or whatever, and then literally like for some reason Wednesday has a little devil puppet, and I love the way that she rubs the hands of the devil puppet together. It's so funny. It's those little touches that I'm just like, these are like, this is why this movie is really fun. Like, it's just like so camp and not serious, but like it also just is very good. It's like that stuff. Of course, I love the like, I think it must be in Anjelica Huston's contract where she just has a key light on her the whole time she's on set with her eyes or whatever. It's amazing. Like,
and the makeup to help make them glow.
I mean, come on, like obviously. It's just loving things like Morticia talking about like you have him under some kind of sex trance. I can respect that, but Debbie. Pastels, that kind of thing. Like, it's just so silly. I also love when she's reading, Morticia's reading to the now changed Pubert, and they look like a regular baby. And she's reading Cat in the Hat to them. It's just like really fun, and she's just like, oh no, he lives. Like, it's just so there are so many good things. I mean, like, and then obviously, like, I think Wednesday herself just being this kind of like, deadpan, acerbic girl of like 11 or 12 or however old she is. But like, so many of her things, like her telling the surgery story, the plastic surgery story to the rest of the campers is like really funny. That's really silly. Oh, I'll be the victim all your life. It's just like, this is some smart writing that I think is just like goes over kids' heads enough, but also when you rewatch it back, you're like, oh, this is actually very funny. And like,
it's smart. Kind of the gift. It's the kid. It's the gift that keeps on giving on that front, right? Like you watch it the first time and it's just like, you might laugh because you catch it. I think especially watching as a younger person. And then like when you watch it again, it's like, oh, it's so funny. And then like you watch it again and you catch like another comment or just that delivery. Something about like it's almost like it's timeless because of the way the jokes just kind of hit the mark. Like when Pugsley, when they're in the line for archery, right, and like Joel Glicker is struggling and he just throws it because he's over it, and then Pugsley shoots down the eagle and they're like, isn't that an American bald eagle? Or aren't they extinct? And Wednesday's just like, they are now.
It's so good.
Doesn't miss a beat. It's just like right there with the comment.
Oh my god!
Like Wednesday's 2 cents.
Oh my god, it's so good. Like it's very fun, and then even like I do like that this movie, especially, it's there's not too much commentary, if you will, on this. I feel like the Addamses themselves are very much kind of a kind of queer coded thing of like this movie or this family is just othered because they are different. They are kind of this weird macabre thing, but like also because of that, you could definitely, I could see why queer audiences would like this movie. But I also think that like just some of the commentary that's being made of like, specifically too with like the camp where a lot of these, like, it's just so funny where you have these people who are saying, we're privileged and that's what this is all about and whatever. And it's just like, that's just when you look at it now, it's just like, no, that's very smartly written. I think, it's, you find out that this you find out the summer camp is like $20,000 apparently. Apropos, I guess. But like, it's just like, writing these like characters that are like chipper and like happy and like all this stuff, right? And like quote unquote normal, juxtaposing them to the Addams family, of course. But yeah, it's really just literally making fun of the privileged and of the upper class or whatever. Even though technically, I guess the Addams are well off, technically, I guess, but they're just different. They're not the same as the families that are going to this place. And I think that's a really interesting thing to put in the script like that, which now is just satire at this point. I think at the time was satire, but is now much more so. And then, of course, like, you know, the idea of this whole thing with, of course, this is coming out right before Thanksgiving, but like, you know, the idea of like this whitewashed idea of what we think of what we're told is what Thanksgiving is, and what the actual history of this all is quite different. But this movie is one where, yeah, it is very much like pointing out the kind of inaccuracies and what we've been taught and all this kind of stuff. And I think they do it. And I think that's why this movie has kind of survived in a way. And it is a timeless thing. That's a good point. It doesn't feel dated to me. You know, I really don't think it does. But it's something where it's just like, no, this is just like a satire of a bunch of different things. And I think it's done in a way that, you know, it's just very funny. Like, it's just that whole like musical number and the whole like, you know, destruction of the Thanksgiving play. Again, it's just like, so I don't know. It's just very smartly written. And it's just like a takedown of what this is. Because yes, if you're white and privileged and all this stuff, it would be different than what you would, you know, yeah, it's absolutely like, you're going to have a different viewpoint as other people in the world do, or other people even in your own country do. Which, yeah, I just think that's like really fun, smart writing, you know, good for Paul Rudnick. You know, the queers are just so much better at just a lot of things, really.
Fact. That's a fact.
I mean, like, I don't know, we're just great, you know, it's fine. Like, you know.
It very much, like, in hindsight, it was so ahead of its time, right? Because like those were,
I think so,
things like that weren't being said, weren't being talked about. And now, you know, obviously it's 2023 when we're chatting. You know, and so much has been challenged, so much has been disrupted in terms of like what normal was. You know, so to have that scene where like Wednesday really breaks it down in 1993, it's like, holy smokes, like this is so valuable, so important. And really, I'm sure it's one of those things where like you write it, like you said, for a level of satire at the time.
Yes.
But like what then has allowed it to have these legs that have just allowed it to go on forever and just be this great movie that is kind of timeless, is because, you know, we're now challenging these things that we were always told, you know, where it's like, like the math doesn't really math in this case. Like, so, you know, hats off to the movie for being so ahead of the curve, ahead of its time. Yeah, absolutely. I can get into that. Just to circle back, you did bring it up a little bit, and I don't want to go too far from it in terms of like some of the otherness and the queerness of the film. So I guess for those listening, you know, I identify as non-binary. And love a gender neutral moment. It was this viewing in particular where the opening scene, I just love it so much when they're like, you know, Father, what is it? And it's like, it's boy, it's a girl. And Gomez is just like so confident in it's an Addams, like, period. That's all it is. Like, nothing else matters other than the fact that it's an Addams. And so I'm just like, oh, I love that. Like I love how inclusive this family
Yeah, no, totally. And I think that's why people come back to this movie, especially this film. Like, it's just, there's a sensibility to it that I think, because it was written by a gay guy, you know, I think you can kind of latch on to that. But I also just think, like, you know, like there is this fun, like you have something like that in 1993 that is, you know, I think people can look at that now, like you said, and be like, you know, wow, that's so super cool that they were like pretty inclusive about that. And, you know, they're poking fun at how ridiculous this is. Like, for example, when Becky Martin Granger is like talking about all the other like campers that are like the campers of color and stuff like that as well. And she doesn't know how to like pronounce some of the names. So like one of the kids' names is Jamal, but then she's like, I'm going to have a real hard time with this one. A Jamal. Like, it's that kind of a thing of like, it's making fun of this like person who obviously is probably not like, you know, aware of much diversity in her own life, I guess, even though she's completely married to a gay guy, but it's fine. my own opinion, but whatever. But it's like, it's poking fun at that. And I think that's what I like about this, is that I like when there can be this kind of biting point to a satire or something that's being said, which is why I like something like, I just realized that in about a month or so, or if it hasn't already come out, Alexander Payne has a new movie coming out, which I'm kind of interested in. He's the same guy who did Election and Citizen Ruth and all these. Go check those movies out, please. They're so good. But he's very much about, like, especially in those films, like he's very much about satirizing and having that kind of biting satire to something like Election, or when it comes to like politics. And then with Citizen Ruth, it's about abortion. So, and he has a new movie coming out actually, but I like that kind of thing. And I think this does do that a little bit. And, I just think that's fun. Like, I mean, so we've talked about some different like scenes of this movie. Talked about some of the characters, I guess, as well. Did you also know that the person who plays Cousin It in this movie actually is also, I believe, the little boy, or not the boy, but the guy who plays Isaac in the Children of the Corn movies? He literally was.
That's news to me. I did not know
you don't
that.
see him, obviously, but yes, that is him. He's the same guy. He is like, he's not like completely a dwarf or anything. He's not a little person or whatever, but he looks younger than he actually is, literally physiologically. So like, that works out in his favor, I guess. But apparently he played Cousin It. I was like, that's cute. That's nice. Good for him. Good for him. Also gay, I believe. Queer. That guy's queer. That's fun. Good old Isaac from Children of the Corn. Have you ever seen Children of the Corn ever? In your life?
I've never seen it. I've never seen it in its entirety, because it was like on TNT or USA.
Probably.
Like, it was definitely one of those movies where it feels like it was in syndication, where I would like catch parts of it. It was like, it'll be on TV. I'll get to it, but then I just never got to it. But
you're fine. The first one's pretty good. I haven't watched the rest of them, but like, I think it's a fun 80s horror. Definitely cute. Love it. But yeah, so I mean, that's like, talk about some of these scenes. I mean, we could really go on and on about the movie in general. Yeah, and I also think like especially queer audiences liking this movie too, because I think just what Joan Cusack is doing with Debbie, especially, is just the height of this over the top camp of that role. Like I said, she knows what movie she's in, and she's supposed to be this villain. Obviously, she is the villain, really. Malibu Barbie. What about Debbie? And all this, like, what about Debbie? God damn it. But anyway, but I love that she just kind of goes for broke. She just goes and is like, yep. And it's this camp over the top performance, how about a kiss? You have a 20?
Like 20, yeah.
It's so good. Like, it's just like, so like, this whole thing is like, I can understand why especially queer audiences like the movie, again, because it's written by a gay guy, because it has these moments of being kind of over the top and campy, whatever Joan Cusack is doing, like it's just all these things that kind of amalgamate into this movie that I think just on its surface, is this rehash of a property that was, long known. But I think if anything, like as somebody who has seen both the movies, I guess you would consider yourself a fan of this property, if you will. What do you think the legacy? Yeah. What do you think the legacy of this film has been? And, like, what do you think the legacy has been? Where do you want to see this series go in the future, I guess, as we're kind of wrapping up a little bit as well. But like, what do you think the legacy of this film has been? And, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, legacy. So, I mean, obviously Debbie, pardon me, Debbie's whole monologue about like, what about Debbie has legacy. In fact, Jinx Monsoon from Drag Race, Jinx has a song called like, what about Debbie? And it's on Jinx's first album. It's so much fun. So I think the campiness of the movie, I think the dark comedy of it all, I think is something that is always remembered because of who the family is, where they find humor in like what is not the norm. I think with this particular property, the Addams, where I would love to see it. Actually, I talked about this to friends about the TV show Wednesday, which I struggled with at first.
Right.
And I get that I am not a teenager. I'm in my late 30s.
Right.
But like Jenna Ortega was great. It was something that the cast did, but I think I get the show is called Wednesday, so it is obviously about Wednesday. But I think what I've always loved about the Addams Family is that it's about the family. So I hope from what I would love to see is like bring it back to the family, tell more stories of like how they're like dealing with things or whatever. Right. And I think that's why this particular movie I love so much, because we get so much with so many different Addams. Yeah. And even with, I guess even the first one, the first one's great because at one point Morticia steps up as like the lead of the family and whatnot. Right. But, I think that the aesthetic, the macabre style that it has, that's part of the legacy. And it's just a world that I feel like a lot of people want to be in. Totally. It's so inviting, I guess, from because it is this family that is creepy and kooky and all the things that they describe them in the song, right. But ultimately, like they're so inviting. Think of Debbie. Like Debbie tried to like murder them, and very much were like by the end of that movie, like she could have joined that family. Absolutely, like, they gladly would have had her. So. I think I'm kind of like going off on a tangent at this point, just in terms of I want more. I just want more of it where it is the family, period. Right? Where that's every character, like an ensemble cast, where they can everybody can shine, have their moments, tell a few stories. Give us a few movies, give us a TV show, whatever. But so we'll see. And I'm looking forward to Wednesday season 2. From what I hear. From what I've read, rumors, whatever, it sounds like there might be more family elements, so that would be fantastic. Right.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think that's totally fair, and I completely understand. I think this movie has had a legacy all its own. I mean, the reason I think it has a cult following is because there are people like yourself who are either your age or a little younger or maybe a little older as well, who grew up and saw this movie and saw the first one perhaps as well. But just remember having this and enjoying it for what it was when they were kids. And I think that's how a lot of cult movies kind of work out, is that, did this film did it work on some level? Like I said, this was technically a financial flop. However, I think it's a little bit better critically, seen, I guess. But I absolutely think like this movie had an impact on other movies coming after it. To tie it back to the Brady Bunch movie, I absolutely think that this movie influenced what the Brady Bunch movies would be a little bit, because I think it takes that television show and turns it into something that really stands on its own and feels really cool. So definitely that, and just anything that might have come after that as well. I think this is a shining example of like, here's how you both do a sequel really well to something, but also like this movie just stands alone on its own. And I love when a movie can do that, for sure. Did you ever watch the animated, like the ones that recently came out? Did you see those at all?
I saw the first one. It was fine. I didn't see the second one.
Okay.
I just kind of really got around to it, didn't prioritize it, but I do remember enjoying the first one. And I do like that the animated movie was, the style of the characters was more in line with the comics. So I thought that was a nice tie-in. So yeah. So, it's that. And like, I think like, I think this movie has had a legacy because of just how like kind of weird and camp it is. I think it has found a queer fan base as well, which is cool too. And just people who are,
horror fans as well. They think of that. I'm sure there's plenty of people who, when Christina Ricci goes to a horror convention, there's plenty of people who love her for Wednesday, obviously. And this movie is a big part of that as well. But yeah, I mean, like, I just think like this movie has had such an interesting legacy. It is a cult film for, I think, a reason, because, it came out of this weird time where Paramount was like, yeah, let's just fucking do it, dude. Let's do it. Like, let's make this weird ass movie. And then let's also make the Brady Bunch movie like after that as well. Like, let's do that. Like, they were just taking risks, and it ended up paying off, which was cool. And I can understand, as somebody who, I wouldn't say I'm like a fan of this, property or whatever. I just haven't watched it enough. But I would love to see it. I didn't watch Wednesday or anything like that. Don't really plan on it really, but maybe, who knows? But it would be nice to just see this. Like, I think if anything, hopefully, I think this property at least has been fine, and it's gone through different iterations. The Munsters has also done as well. And we will not really talk much about the 2021 Rob Zombie Munsters. Oof. Oh God, I tried watching that.
It was fine. I thought it was fine.
I tried watching that, and you're better than me, because
So I think, just to I guess touch on that idea of like different people touching different properties, all the things.
Yeah.
I guess as a musician, and writing songs, sure, I always like doing my own stuff, but like with certain bands that I really like, I love their original songs, yes, but there are times where I love when they do a cover. For example, I think the band Dope does some of the best covers when it comes to band. The band The Haxons, I think they are like top tier in terms of like taking a song and making it their style and doing a great cover. They have a great cover of Pet Sematary. They just put out a cover of Ministry's Every Day's Halloween. But so to that point, I mean, there's a point to this. When somebody like Rob Zombie or whoever wants to take a property and like do their own thing with it, I think I always come at it from the cover song mindset of like, yes, I think it needs to be a little bit different. Let's see what it has to be. Let's see what they're doing with it. And I think some of it is also like the optimist in me, where I'm like, a group of people worked really hard on this property, so like let it be its own thing. Sure,
that's fair.
I'm also easily entertained by like a lot of things, so I'm not here to be critical. I'm here to be entertained.
That's fair. I myself am. I like to be easily entertained too, but I also want to be entertained as well. And for me, at least, that particular film did not do it for me. As somebody who's never really even watched the Munsters like that, I just was like, what is going on here? What's up with this? Which again, that's kind of a general consensus of that film anyway, but I completely respect what you're saying though, where it's like, yeah, let them do something a little different and maybe it'll work. There's probably plenty of people who would be like, yo, what the fuck's with those like Addams Family movies? Like, they're horrible because it's not like the original show. But that's the point. It's not supposed to be. Again, this is just turning into a Brady Bunch podcast, but like, talking about like, there's people who are like, oh, I hate those movies but there's people who think that too. And I'm like, okay, but like, sure, I guess. But again, everyone has their own kind of understandings, or not understandings, but like their own opinions on that stuff. I just think for me, at least, like I just have to actually be entertained. And when I'm not entertained, that just makes it, when I'm not entertained, it's just not something I'm going to be like, oh yeah, rush out and watch this. You know what I mean? But everyone's different,
Absolutely.
And that's fine. Yeah, totally. But I think that kind of brings an end to our conversation about this, though, because I mean, our closing thoughts, our final thoughts, like Jerry Springer, I think if anything, like my final thoughts at least are, I think this movie is great. I think it stands on its own. It's super fun, super campy. It's nice. You don't have to necessarily have watched the show before to understand it. You can kind of just come in blind and hopefully enjoy yourself with it. And I think that this movie doesn't necessarily have it only has so much to say, but I think it actually says a lot. And I don't really know if it meant to do that, but I'm happy that it does, I guess, if anything. So, and I'd love to see this. I'd love to see this property done differently as well. And I'm down for that. Do you have any fun closing thoughts as well, Travis?
I'm trying to think. I would agree with everything you said. Just your final thoughts. The cast is wonderful. I definitely would like to, I guess, emphasize you probably don't have to see the first one. You probably don't have to have seen any Addams thing. Like, you can just grab this movie and drop into it, and off you go to the races and have a good time. Yep. So I think that's definitely not something you can say about a lot of other movies. So I love that.
Agreed.
I think it's just so smart, so fun, timeless, in so many ways, but then also at the same time, kind of very 90s. Love that the ending credit song is by Tag Team with Addams Family.
Yes.
How much fun is that?
So good.
Just pick me up, put me in that world, put me in that house. Where can I get a room at? Because I just want to be there. I absolutely love it.
I love that. Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much, Travis, for coming on the show today, having this conversation about this movie. Again, I might pop it back on again, around this time anyway, because it is a fun little Thanksgiving movie, if you want to call it that, I guess. But thank you so much for coming on the show. I know this won't be your last time. We already have some things in the works. I'm super excited about, about what else we'll talk about as well. But thank you so much for coming on. I really do appreciate it. And would you like to plug any of your socials or anything like that for anybody who may want to follow you?
Yeah. Well, first, let me say thank you for having me on. You sent that spreadsheet out. We chatted, like you said, on Instagram. And when I saw Addams Family Values, I was like, I love this movie. If no one has signed up for it, can I please come and talk about it? So this has been great. I love that podcasts and horror once again are bringing people together. Like you said, you were on Horror Queers, and that's where I heard you. And actually, you had reminded me also that I heard you on Movies That Made Us Gay.
Oh yes, My Wonderful Boys,
the Party Monster,
and Beautiful Thing.
So again, thank you for having me. This has been great. I guess in terms of social, I'm on Instagram and Twitter. It's More Than Mindless without the A due to character limits. So MORETHNMINDLESS. So you can follow me there, where I'm usually posting. It's kind of come back, my little caffeinated and dangerous coffee thing that I do. I love coffee. I love talking about coffee and how people make mixed drinks and cocktails, all the things. My band, Dead Bird Pie, we're not currently active, but you can look us up on Apple Music, Spotify. We have some, it's kind of horror-esque themed music, if you will. Afraid of the Hearse Racer is a little maxi single that is very much a horror rock thing. And that's about it. Feel free to send me a message about some movie. I probably haven't seen it because I'm terrible at watching stuff, but the ones that I have seen, I love and always want to talk about them. So so thank you so much. This has been great.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And I think that brings us to our end, but thank you so much. And hope you have a good rest of your night. Okay.
Thanks. So, and because I usually end things this way, I'm going to say cheers, bitch. It's the thing that I say and do.
There you go. Cheers. Bitch. As always, if you'd like to get in touch with me, you can do so via email at cultcinemacircle@gmail.com in case you want to give any movie or episode recommendations, give feedback on the show, or if you'd like to just say, hey, I'm open to all of it. If you'd like to follow the show on social media, you can do so on Instagram and Instagram threads at Cult Cinema Circle. I tend to post what I'll be covering for the next week on there, post stories, things like that. On X, I'm at Cult Cinecircle. On there, I don't really post a whole lot, but if you want to follow the show, it's there for you to follow. And then on Letterboxd, I'm at Jesse, Jesse, Kremp, Kremp, all one word. On there, I log little movie reviews, I'll log what I'm watching, and then it's also a nice way to kind of see what I might be covering on the show in the future. Be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast on your podcatcher of choice, whether that be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm pretty much on all of them. Be sure to leave 5 stars and a 1 to 2 sentence review about the show so we can grow the audience and then just spread the love all around. Be sure to tune in next week to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast, where I'll be covering 2008's Repo the Genetic Opera. By the year 2056, an epidemic of organ failures has devastated the planet. The megacorporation GeneCo provides organ transplants on a payment plan, and those who can't fulfill their plans have their organs repossessed. In the midst of this, a sickly teenager discovers a shocking secret about herself, her father, and their connection to GeneCo. As always, thank you for taking the time to listen to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast. And remember, I hope that someday you'll know the indescribable joy of having children and of paying someone else to raise them. Take care. Bye.